So yeah, what we'll do is we'll watch through one of them, right? And then I'll say, okay, 2 minutes on the clock, as much feedback as you can, go, whatever. And then that's where you just kind of, let people know how to make it better. Now, what you're saying in that 2 minutes is kind of significant, right? This is not a let's find things to bash about it session, right? It's also not a let's pat people on the back session. This is a how to make it better, right? Everybody, I don't critique. You've been working on this for like 4 weeks now, and it's very easy to get kind of emotionally tied to the piece, right? To where I know what you all really want to hear is, that's amazing, right? Like that's like, and I get it, and you may hear that. Recognize that if you hear that, you don't actually get anything from today. I mean, you got a little like boost in confidence, but you don't get any better at animation, right? So you should be coming to these, even though you've worked hard on it, even though you're emotionally tied to it, you should be coming to it with the, what is wrong with my piece? How can I make it, how can I make this stronger, right? And everybody else should be critiquing your piece from the perspective of, I want you to succeed, and trust me, you do want the person sitting next to you to succeed, because that's the person who will call you in 10 years and say, hey, we got this great new opening, you should come to our studio, or whatever, right? So, like really, the more the people next to you succeed, the more you will actually succeed as well. So really, this is about making it better. Now, I know that takes some of the fun out of the like show and tell element of this. Of like, you've worked really hard on it. So I'm not discouraging people from saying, oh, I really like that part. Actually, that's good feedback too, right? It's not a, this is the things that's wrong with it. It's, this is why it's successful, and this is the parts that are not successful, and this is sort of some ideas on maybe what would make it more successful. Right? Pixar calls it plussing it. Right? You take something that's already working, even if it's already working well, how do you make it better? So some of these may pop up, and you're going to be like, I don't know how to make that one better. That one's awesome, right? That's where you get to get better at critiquing, right? You have to look for things to make better. Like if you have to make something better, what is it? Like what do you like? That's a learning opportunity for you, is to look at somebody else's piece that looks really strong and say, but if I had to make this better, how would I do it, right? Okay, so there's something else I used to do. I'm not going to do it this time. I know some of you are like, is he going to do it or not? I used to do the star review thing. 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 star. Some of you are like maybe disappointed that I'm not doing it. Some of you are maybe really glad I'm not doing it. I do think it's helpful though to think of it in that way. Is that really this is about communicating to someone else, and just sort of listening to people's feedback may help you identify whether it's communicating, right? If somebody's like, what are they doing, right? Then it's not communicating, right? Like they didn't get an instruction book or whatever, like a brief of this that says, okay, in this animation, what you're going to see is this. And the rest of your audience won't either. It needs to be able to stand on its own. And so that's why I don't really let you introduce it. Right? We're just going to watch it, and the rest of the people are in the room are going to critique it. You can chime in if somebody has a question about something or something like that. But for the most part, this is not an opportunity for you to explain the piece. The piece should be able to explain itself. Right? If it's not, that is great information to have at this point. That's the best feedback you can get, is that this is not communicating, right? You can ask questions. If somebody's like, this part doesn't make sense to me. I mean, ask them like, why? What is not making sense? What do you think is happening there? Why are you getting that indication from it? So it's okay to have a conversation. What What I hate is when we do a critique and somebody's like, okay, let me explain what's going on here. So, here's and then they like try to explain the piece while you're watching it, and then you can't tell for sure if you understood it or not, because you maybe just understood their explanation, right? Okay, questions before we get started? Okay. The other thing about this is, again, like, I know it's really hard because you tie yourself kind of emotionally to this. None of this should be taken negatively as a personal critique, right? People are not like calling you names or anything like that, or at least they shouldn't. And on the other side of that, don't call people names. Like, don't critique out of anger, right? Don't be like, that person cut me off the other day, I'm just gonna tear their piece apart, right? It should be coming from a place of trying to help everybody. So really the hardest part about this is deciding which order we're going to go in. In this case, let's just go ahead and keep it alphabetical.
Largest file size.
Largest file size?
Yes. But I have a folder.
Huh? Oh, you have no. Well, we can start with the folders. I think we're going to. There's no way I can actually organize this to get the fold. Well, I guess that puts the folders at the bottom. Y'all want to do it that way?
No.
Sierra, do we want to do it that way?
Come on.
Okay. So, one more thing I do want to mention. There are people in the room who are repeating the class, right? So, actually, a lot of people in the room who are repeating the class. So, not everybody's piece is going to be the body mechanics stuff, and some of the ones we're going to start off with are not. And you, if you're just taking the class for the first time, you may be aware of that, right? Like you know about it already. You know that people are working on stuff that is like, they've already gone through the class. They're working on something a little higher level. But you still have eyes, right? And you've still been watching animation all your life. So critique that as well, right? That's not just for other people's critique. I will give the people who are doing stuff a little different, if you need to explain what your project is, not like describe it, but which of the pieces you were tackling from the list, we can do that. Amy, this is you're doing a dance piece, is that right?
Yeah, it's just a single person for now.
Single person dancing? Okay. Does it need audio?
Yes, it might be loud.
So.
All I wanna be is 멋진 내 맘대로 걸어 머리 어깨 무릎 다 힙해 Do it like me do it 나를 따라해 가끔 모두 같이 해 All I wanna be is 멋진 내 맘대로 걸어 머리
So I had to cut it in half because there was like a big chunk of the ending that kind of wasn't sticking up, so I had to like cut it.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and we'll kind of put the audio right about there where you can still hear it a little bit. And I'll go ahead and get the timer started. So 2 minutes on the clock, as much feedback as you can to help Amy improve this.
I'm also typing.
Yeah, she's also typing. Again, try to speak loudly if you can so the microphone can pick you up. And go. So let me go ahead and mute
I
you.
do have the reference to attached to it.
Okay. Let's watch it just as the animation first, and then we'll put the references. Okay. What do y'all think? How can she make it better?
She snaps into the final pose kind of harshly. I think you should just implement some follow through for when she gets into the last pose there. And there's a couple different ways you can do that, and introduce some of like the idling like she has in the beginning here into that last pose as well.
Yeah, that kind of actually did cut off when I that's where I cut it off from the actual original, but I get you.
Her feet, like when she's bending in that pose, her like back foot should be higher up, like her toe should be bent, not her ankle.
Yeah.
And sometimes when she like snaps into place, her feet don't really like, they just kind of slide into place. So I would just make sure, like, because you can totally like move around your toes, and you can do all the movements just on your toes. Like some of them you don't really even need to think of her feet. She can slide her foot across, but it just needs to read better.
I think maybe like above, I see the shoulder and face could use more like say expressions to it, like more, because it seems like kind of blank at the moment.
When she jumps into her last pose, it seems like she's kind of like floating up a little bit. I don't know for sure what happens in the reference, but I think just that motion needs to be communicated a little better, because it just kind of looks like it just sporadically just pops up in the air a little bit, goes into the last pose.
Again, just going off the fact that we don't have the reference, a lot of her hand motions they're very fast, so they're hard to read. So that might, oh no!
Okay, keep going.
Okay, they're just hard to read. So maybe just having them hold for a frame or two, like, not like still where she looks lifeless, but kind of in the similar position. So it gives our brains a little bit of time to like adjust and actually see what she's trying to do. Like you can kind of see with the claps, where we know claps enough to know what that is, but it's going so fast where it almost is like a flutter.
I would move the fingers just a bit more. They're kind of very stiff moving around. It's like a whole hand unit just moving really.
I think if you curl them in, that would help.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are keyframes, all of them, each individual fingers, but because they're very close together, they look like they're stiff, but I don't know. I probably have to push them a little further for that one.
You could do what Greg mentioned beforehand, just where it was, like if you start with this pose and end with this pose, in the middle you can have it bent so it's more fluid.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do every time she drags her hands, but I don't know.
So you're basing it off of the girl with the red headband, right?
Yeah.
I think just the biggest, now looking at the reference, I think the biggest thing that should probably be communicated is the sense of character weight, because you should when she's doing some of her poses and when she goes from one to the other, it kind of feels a little too even. Maybe there should be a little bit of delay when she goes from one to the other, or just some things to help better communicate that she's just an actual person, because it just kind of feels a little too dull-ish, I want to say.
I think another thing is it's good to follow the reference, but I wouldn't do it 100% accurately. Because the character model is different from her, so if the character model is going to look weird doing a certain motion, you should change it to fit the character model.
You could probably do with loosening the spine up a little bit and exaggerating some of the poses. Like whenever she goes from this position to stand up, she kind of arches her back a little right there. She should probably arch her back and kind of slide up into that pose and maybe offset each of the different spine controls. And same goes for the root control and the feet. They all kind of just move together, especially when they right there.
Jump at the end.
Yeah, that jump at the end.
That's something I think is right now the pass that if you had a limited amount of time that you were going to make a pass on, which I think you can do as many revisions as you want. The thing I would look at is offsetting between her hips and feet, like when one foot gets to the location, just to make sure like that last jump is a good example. Is her hips hit down at about the same time her feet hit down. And I think the feet need to get there first and then the hips hit to make it look like they're absorbing that way. And it's really small, short offsets between the hips and feet. And then the other thing is I think you could add just a little bit more looseness in the upper body, like whatever that upper chest control is. When I first watched it, that was the thing that felt kind of like her head is very loose feeling. I feel like but in comparison to that, it's making the chest feel a little stiff. And I think the last thing is I think it was Elijah was saying that the hand, I think you can get some more dynamic finger stuff going just in the transitions between stuff, between poses. So they may still need to both be in that pose, but you could drag it up as it's coming back, and then as it's coming down, you could drag it that way, and then you'd still get that, but you would get that instead, right? And so I think it's little things that's almost like I won't say a level of polish, but it's a level of splining that's kind of deeper into the process. And I think some subtle arc tracking on the hands when she's doing the really fast stuff would help a lot of that as well. So, what's your plan with this one? Like, are you gonna continue to do the entire thing? Or are you doing?
Yeah, that's what took me the longest because it was I didn't realize it was 30 seconds long until I did the playback version of the blocking pass.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with it until now, but I was focusing more on the first half. Then later on, when I went to the second half, that little end part of it was like bothering me, and I feel like it's gonna take me longer than it should be, so I decided to cut it in half for this project.
What is the final length on this one? It's 13.
About 13.
So something to consider is how this will fit into your reel.
Yeah.
And I definitely think the parts to me that are reading the strongest is the way she stands up. Like there's some really interesting like drag through her upper body as she does that. And the little like dance she does where she like hits her heel. I think that those are the areas that if you have to prioritize the area you polish to get it into the demo reel, that would be the area that I think is reading the strongest, and you can kind of just plus that a little bit and put that little segment into your demo reel while you're working on the rest of it. So, yeah, cool. All right, so we obviously went over the 2 minutes. That happens a little bit. I like to try to use the little alarm going off as a notification. We need to get closer to wrapping it up. And I'll usually let the first few go a little longer too, because people are going to have comments that that will apply to multiple animations, and sometimes it's easier to explain those the first time through. The other thing is we haven't gotten used to the 2-minute warning yet, right? And so I think that would give us a little bit of a heads up of like, okay, yeah, I got to get this out kind of quick. I think it also will kind of force us to focus in on the things that are working the most. Was this a 1 project or a 2 project piece?
1.
1 project. So you're gonna just use this and like polish it up and then move on to a new one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think this one turned out really good. So, the other thing, obviously, let's give Amy a hand. Okay. Who wants to go next? Oh, what am I saying? I know who's going next.
The EXR is the actual what the render will look like.
Let's see that first. So.
It would just take way too long to render because all my textures are from substance.
Let me get my. Sorry, it's gonna log me into ETSU real quick. Oh no. 265-141. I'm having to log into ETSU to open. Is that like authentication thing? Like
Thanks, Adobe.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of the.
That's what it'll look like roughly. I've changed a few of the textures. That was from last semester, but that's roughly what it'll look like.
Yeah, it's showing a little lighter on the screen too. So. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and watch it a few times. All right, cool. So I'm assuming pantomime acting is sort of what you're going for.
Yep.
And can you just, is this a revision?
This is a revision.
Okay,
But I completely changed all the animation.
Right, so this is pretty much just a redo. Okay. All right, cool. So this was something you'd done before, and I'm just kind of starting it over from scratch for the most part. All right, cool. So 2 minutes on the clock, as much feedback as you can on how to improve it, and go.
I
This is
think-
just, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I think a little bit more drag on the head as it goes from the desk up would help give a little bit more character. It would make it seem like he was a little bit more sleepily getting up.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure, this is my own personal opinion, but maybe like forward his arm when as soon as he like push pause on the controller, whatever, the alarm, maybe have like a slight pause, cause it seems like as soon as you press it, it just dropped down really too quickly. I'm not sure how, it's different for everybody how they react, so.
For me, when he hits the button, he's kind of just using his shoulder like this. I think maybe you should put more of his body into it,
Okay.
instead of like drag his like the back shoulder blade like forward when he pushes it. And yeah, introduce the drag that Ramona was talking about, when he leans back forward, so the head, like the chest goes forward and the head follows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with those, like the two head drag things, I think will really flop.
Also, this is really small, but I think it's beautifully done. The little hand, the second one, when it falls off and you see little fingers.
Yeah.
That's really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
I think you could add a little bit of whenever, like at the start when the alarm goes off, have his hand like cringe a little bit, like.
Yeah, that was one of the things because the hands are so loose on the second watch through, the one that's on the computer is feeling a little stiff at the beginning.
Okay.
And I think you could do something that's just like going from this to like this a little bit, just like kind of bowing it up a little bit.
You could maybe also even just exaggerate the facial expression a little bit more to make it seem like, oh, I don't want to get up. Why do I have to do this?
Yeah.
Like give a little bit of like a maybe like make the eyebrows a little bit more pointed. Like give it a little more of a squint.
Raise
to
one
it.
side of the lip a little bit,
Yeah.
like a sneer kind of thing.
I think he kinda does that.
Mm-hmm.
But the end part's like really good.
Mm-hmm.
This is also cut in half, like, it was 22 seconds, so I cut it in half. So I did animate the rest of it, but then I was like, I just need to cut it in half, so.
Are you rendering with all the entire thing?
Yeah. So it would take about a month. Yeah, I remember it.
Other comments?
You could push the breathe in a little bit more, with the shoulders go more back to accentuate the,
Like arch his back, or would his shoulders go higher?
or just back.
Okay.
Because right now it's just kind of more straight up, just arch the back, accentuate the,
This is something really small, but you could introduce a bit of delay between the eye and the mouth movements, or rather the eyelid and the mouth movements, because they both hit at the same time here when they close.
Yeah.
So if you just separate those a bit, I think you could add more to it as well.
So I'll toss in a couple of quick little comments. I think you kind of mentioned that the computer hand, like loosening that up in a few spots. I think what you got going on with the fingers rolling off is working really good. It'd be nice to see that first digit flex just a little bit as it slides off, and you get like a little flip through on it. It's really close, like where it's at, and that would just add it a little
Like,
bit.
you like you told, right as it goes off, it'll flex right here. And then
Yeah,
flex
and
down.
then like smack down. I think some stuff like that would help. Obviously, I think if you can get that hair dragging as he goes back, that would be
That'll
cool.
just have to be a blend shape at the end.
Okay,
'Cause he
yeah.
doesn't have control for his
He doesn't
hair.
have any hair controls. Yeah, I think you could do that with blend shape or like a cluster. Like, it doesn't have to be much, and don't like animate them doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
It's really just like your hair doesn't do too much, right? It just kind of moves a little bit. I think just having it drag back and just kind of. I bet it was next door. So somebody mentioned like the chest coming up right as he's like sort of bringing the finger down. I think you could have a little bit of that, but I think the other thing that would help is that when that finger hits, it's going to send a shock wave up his arm, and if you can feel that like in his chest, just sort of wiggle a little bit,
Should I
a
shake
frame
the
or so
camera?
after, huh?
Should I shake the camera?
You could try it. Try just like a really small one maybe, because then I feel like the camera's on there. I think if not the camera, maybe like at least the phone, like sort of pop it just a little bit, and maybe the book next to it. But just some of that little like recoil of like when you hit something, it jars up your body,
Yeah.
and I think you'd feel that in his chest a little bit. I think that'd be a really nice little secondary action thing that would help.
I think, I'm sorry. I think the thing that will most help the hand action is giving a better arc. It just kind of seems like it goes up, kind of like bevels out a little bit, and then sharply goes down. So like giving it more of a smoother arc motion would probably help sell that motion just a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe as it's going up, you could play with the arc a little bit. I like that you're holding at the top, because that's giving us a clear anticipation to like watch that. You even kind of do a pretty good job of trying to frame it within the poster behind him, and so it kind of pulls it out so we look at it. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. Maybe as it's like coming up, like you could kind of arc it a little bit more.
You can still have, I think that anticipation would still be really good, so that way the pose has more time to register.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of end on a compliment. Like pantomime pieces they sell a lot of your ability to be able to do acting animation, and this one's a really good one. Like none of the notes are things that are like broken on it, right? And I think everybody read it as what it was from the very beginning, right? Anything you can do to add to that would be nice. And one of the little things I think you can do to add to it, because I'm an old man, moving starts to hurt. And like, and you all have probably done that before. I mean, woke up and like you slept weird, and like you stand up, it just kind of hurts a little bit. I feel like if you could add like a little micro expression or like a little like twinge in his face as he's pushing himself up, just like a little like that or something like that, you can tell that his back didn't feel good right as it passed through that one little section. I think you could add some little stuff like that happening in the face as he's raising up, and that would really add to the feeling of that. And it would be really small and really quick, I think. Like a little like a little twinge. Somebody gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say on the same note, you could maybe play around where he like opens his eyes like one at a time where it's like droopy. Trying to do right now is like,
They actually do that, but you said like when he stands up?
Yeah,
okay.
where it's just like one's opening faster than the others, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, you can do that little like
Yeah.
eye flutter thing too as he's opening.
So
Yeah.
the facial animation is very clean. I did it in probably 35 minutes, just like now.
Well, and I think it's like anything else. Like sometimes you have to get it on there, live with it for a few minutes, and then be like, hey, I know where I can make that better.
Yeah.
The cool thing about, and I've mentioned these a few times, we'll talk about them more. Facial animation using animation layers is really nice because you can add a whole bunch of little stuff without having. There's like the controls are not well organized on the face, right? It's not like there's a root for the face. It's like your jaw's kind of doing some stuff, your lips is doing some stuff, your eyes are doing some stuff. So you can kind of add certain things in just on a layer. Like you could add a flicker on the eye and just blend in and out of that layer to see how that works when you add it in certain spots. So there's some cool stuff you could do with the face, I think, that would add that last little bit of polish to it. So yeah, this is looking really good.
I just wanted to say one thing. This doesn't really have anything to do with the animation, but I really like how like you're respecting the rule of thirds. Like the character takes up, they're not center, but they take up like a good like third of the screen, and the rest of it is like it. My brain stops.
No, I guess the composition's good in this.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
just period, the composition's good. Like you got this curtain behind them that kind of keeps our eye from going off the page too much. You got this lamp and this book that kind of pull us back into them.
It's almost a spiral.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to go for. I was trying to keep everything pretty centered and like encompassed around him.
And I like that it's just an interesting camera angle. So this is actually I think a really strong piece. I think it's going to make a good portfolio piece. So yeah, let's get on here. All right. Okay. Caroline. So you need audio, right?
Yes.
Okay.
She speaks.
She speaks.
She speaks.
Oh, and she's so adorable.
The English language cannot fully capture the depth and complexity of my thoughts, so I'm incorporating emoji into my speech to better express myself. Winky face. The English language cannot fully capture the depth and complexity of my thoughts, so I'm incorporating emoji into my speech to better express myself. Winky face. The English language cannot fully capture the depth and complexity of my thoughts, so I'm incorporating emoji into my speech to better express myself. Winky face. The English language.
So this is kind of hard because I know you want to be able to hear it while you're critiquing it. Let me try to.
Winky face.
Let's put it
The
right
English
up.
language cannot fully capture the depth and complexity of my thoughts, so I'm incorporating emoji into my speech to better express myself.
So I'm going to turn it down a little lower than we need to, just so when the video can still get your voice while we're doing that. So, all right, cool. Let me full screen this and put this 2 minutes on the clock. So I think that this one's an interesting one. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're going both creature and dialogue shot, right? It's kind of what you were going for.
Yeah.
So now, are you targeting primarily creature in your portfolio?
Yes.
Right. So, all right, cool. So, 2 minutes on the clock. I know we haven't all done a dialogue shot or a voice acting shot, but anything that's kind of catching your eye, and 2 minutes, and go.
I think with the character. Oh, I'm sorry. I think when the character just like they say the winky face line, the head just kind of goes a little too sharply into like it goes a little too sharply down. It feels that motion just feels a little too fast and it just goes a little too far. I would definitely recommend like maybe pulling it back just a little bit, or at least adding or holding that pose more, so that way it registers better. It just feels a little too sharp.
One of the first things I noticed when I was watching this is that the cat doesn't fully set.
Yeah.
And that was, if you're able to hold, have it fully set down, like, and have the legs pushed up a little bit, but the legs are more up, you still have like look more natural instead of just kind of hovering it.
Yeah, I noticed that while I was doing little things on it. One reason why I didn't have her all the way down is because it broke the rig. So I probably would need to go back and push those legs forward more, and do that, but yeah, I noticed that too.
Also, when she's setting that, it looks like the ears, lead a little bit instead of dragging a little bit, because they look like they go back instead of folding in just a tiny bit. I might just miss it. It looks like they go up as she sets them instead of dragging a little bit.
Yeah, I can push those more.
The first thing I kind of noticed, and this is, I think it's just the camera angle, is she doesn't always look at us, the audience, which is fine, but like your brain wants to follow whatever she's looking at because you want to follow her eyes. So I keep on looking off from her and up every time she looks off to the side, and there's just nothing there to draw us back in. That could just be as simple as adding something in that corner or just shifting the camera.
Yeah.
Like that top corner.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
My brain's like, oh, she's looking there, and I'm like, oh, it's just the corner.
It could be as simple as, looking at the catwalk where it's going down from the
Yeah.
corner instead of going off.
Oh, that's all good. Go.
What? Oh, when her paw does this thing, it's just straight, and she does it twice, and so it almost looks like copy and paste a little bit. It's not, well, it's the same, you need to break it up just a little bit, I think. Add a little bit of rotation to it.
I got you.
I
Okay.
got next.
So, the one thing I was gonna say is that with that first time she puts her paw down, it like hitches on the squash. And I feel like I'm a little bit confused. I don't know much about how like the paws like expand whenever they push, but it looks like some of them like it expands the paws and then comes back in the sense that the fingers are squashing out and then on one of the last ones on that furthest out foot, it just stays squashed out. So I don't know if that's a thing where she's like slightly adjusting her weight so those paws will push back in,
Yeah.
or what? But
That's
that
kind
may
of
be
how I was
something.
interpreting it as, is,
Yeah.
when she moves her paws forward, she's still applying pressure and then kind of relaxing back up on it. But it's possible that I could have just missed doing that again on
Yeah.
some of the other paws.
Yes, I think I was gonna say real quick, maybe like pushing the legs up just a little bit so it indicates where it like squashes or it gets rid of the squash a little bit. I don't know, maybe something to play around with.
For me, bouncing off what Ramona said about the head movement during winky face, I don't think the head moves too fast necessarily, or the action is too quick or unreasonable, but it's kind of just her head and neck moving. So if you incorporate the shoulders a bit more into the motion, and then she like slinks back up into the position that she's going for, I think that might sell it a bit more.
I'll piggyback just a little bit on that and what they said. I think some of it too is the arc. So if you look at, if you were to track the arc of the nose, it feels like at the bottom of that, it may hit a little sharp and go back. I think you just kind of curve into it just a little bit more. I feel like you're leading with the top of the head like this. Then I think that you could arc the nose out and it'll soften a little bit of what Ramon was talking about, and then still keep that snappiness to it. Other comments?
I think whenever you push the head forward on the winky face, since the weight is going forward, adding that squash that you're trying to do with the pause, adding that again instead of having them stay still, because your weight will shift primarily to the front pause at that, because she's like moving forward.
This one's a hard one because you're tackling like 3 pretty complicated things here. So you're doing acting, you're doing dialogue with a creature that has a weird mouth.
Yeah.
Well, not weird, weird for what we're used to seeing.
I could not get the W on the winky face right. I
You-
tried.
You know, it's not reading as wrong to me,
Okay.
but I do think there's maybe a chance that you could push it in some spots. Yeah, I know, like it's hard.
I followed it so hard, I could not get it right.
So what we can try is if there's one thing that's just not reading, we could just make a manual blend shape for it and basically sculpt the shape you want to hit and just blend in and out of that when you need it. On top of all that, you're doing a quadruped, which has some really interesting stuff going on with the weight and balance because you've got 4 legs and like 2 kind of hip sources. And then you're also trying to have this character sit down and look natural.
Yeah.
And I think all 3 of those are hard things to do. And probably what you're hearing with your critique is an overlap of some of the spots where you can push it just a little bit in those 3 things, right? So I think the you know, there's a little bit of acting stuff happening and there's a little bit of weight stuff happening with the sit. And I think it's like, but I think it's reading pretty clearly for the most part. I think now it's just pushing it to that last extent. Is it the first time you've done a render of it too?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that when you were playblasting it, it looked much more like it was sitting, like that you weren't able to see the the shadow and stuff underneath it will sort of give some of that away. And so yeah, I think it's just a little bit of messing around with it, and I think it's well on its way to being a really strong portfolio piece. So.
Complicated, right? It's got a lot of bells and whistles to her.
Give it show a little bit.
That's the joke.
All right, cool. Let's see where hands. Okay, Elijah. So this is crazy. Like we're 5 people in, and this is the first one that is actually a body mechanics project from.
No, it's not. This is the second time.
It's a creature.
Huh?
It's a quadruped body mechanics.
That's this.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yours is a quadruped. I forgot which one you were doing. Okay.
How could you lie to us, Greg?
I lied.
Wow. Shames.
Never mind. I don't know if there's anybody in here who's done this one the first time. That's right. This is yeah. I was forgetting which piece was done. You're not in portfolio this semester, right? All right, let's go ahead and put 2 minutes. So again, this is another quadruped. This time, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I knew which bike. I was like, oh yes, that's good. Another quadruped. This time more of a physical body mechanics piece, not an acting piece as much. So, all right, 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve it, and go.
Is it okay if I start with a question? Okay, the tail. In the beginning when I'm gonna name her Susan, when she's walking on, her tail is in that like S phase, and then when she's walking across the wall, it's in S again. Do you wanna keep it stiff? Like, is that the aesthetic you're aiming for?
I wasn't trying to keep it stiff, no, I just was not able to get a lot done to the tail.
Yeah, I know you're having trouble with it. I was just curious if it was a choice or if it was I had to pick and choose my battles.
The trouble was more at the base of the tail than the tail in general.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of hidden behind it when it's on top of the wall.
Gotcha. I just, personally, I think it's an odd contrast because when Susan jumps, it swings a lot, but when she walks, it doesn't.
I wanted it to switch, I just haven't got to it yet.
Okay, okay. Anyone else?
I think there could be more anticipation on that first jump, just a bit. Like the front part of their body moves back really well. I think the back side could use a bit more anticipation on the jump.
So you're just holding a little bit longer in that squash?
Yeah.
I think a little bit more exaggeration in the stretching pose could probably help, because I think I like where you're going, but I think it's like maybe the chest could be pushed forward just a little bit more.
Like slide the toes, because the
Yeah.
toes stay in the same position. Oh, and they slide a little bit.
I think I'll also really second what Sierra was mentioning about the tail. I know you just couldn't really get to the tail, and I'm not gonna like berate you for that, but definitely in a revision, I think the tail would give a lot of character to the piece.
That was one of the reasons I was upset that we never get to the tail.
I think the ears have a little bit of control on them too, if you get just a little bit of bounciness to some of it.
The tails and the ears and stuff I didn't get to.
But I mean, I think the weight on the jump up there is looking really pretty good. I don't want to hop in front of anybody. Any other comments on this one?
When it steps onto the wall, like the last wall, whenever it's walking horizontally, it feels like the feet kind of snap into place just the tiniest bit, like the rotation on them, like not the forward and back, but like the rotation feels like they kind of snap.
Okay.
Like right there, snaps. The back right foot kind of snaps. It rotates in. And I don't know if that's gimbal lock thing. I think I have trouble with that right there.
It might be gimbal lock. I wasn't able to go in and edit a lot of the rotation.
Yeah.
Because I was running out of time and I just needed to focus on transactions for a lot of things to get them feeling how I wanted to get them.
So so just a little bit of snappiness, but it's really fairly noticeable.
I think my I kind of second on most of the comments. The little thing that kind of catches me is it still feels to me like that turn at the top of the wall feels like a sharp turn. And I don't necessarily know how to say it out loud with words. Like I kind of draw it from the top. But if you're thinking of those two, like the hips and the rib cage as those two masses, right? It's like the character jumps and sort of angles the rib cage to go into this new angle of being on the wall, but it doesn't feel like the hips do the same, right? Or the butt part does the same. It feels like it keeps going straight, goes past it, and gets pulled back, right? And I think it needs to kind of feel like it's like easing in and changing its arc a little bit more right there. It's something really small, but it makes the weight on the back of it look kind of strange at the top of that hop to me. And the last little thing is that I really like the way it ends. I feel like maybe you're rushing it a little bit. Give it just a little bit more breathing room on the way the head kind of flips around and lays down. Like, instead of like flopping the head down so hard, maybe you sort of settle it in. Might give it a little bit more like settle time on that. Because it's got a nice, I like your pacing to it, right? You got a pretty fast walk, this kind of quick hop up, and then it's kind of like, I'm safe, we can slow down the scene. I also like the comment about maybe holding that anticipation just a frame or two longer, just to get that build up for it. Yeah, this is a really solid piece.
I would like to ask about the staging, because I wanted to keep it simple, with it not being a very colorful rig as well. I was just curious about thoughts on that.
It's kind of hard to add color to anything that isn't the rig, because then you draw attention to not the actual creature, right? Because if you make the box like a bright red, then that'll become a focal point as well as the creature.
Especially since the box is center of, of the screen, like I would only be looking at that box if you put like a bright garish color to it. I think really just only focusing on the model is the most important thing to it. Like the background should just be there for the character to act on top of it, not to steal the attention.
I think staging wise, the only thing that kind of, I won't say it bothers me, but it's like we're showing all of this section of the environment for that first part, and then once it gets up there, it feels like
There's just a lot of empty space still.
yeah, there's still a lot of empty space that we're using, and I wonder if you could pull it off with just a subtle camera motion throughout the whole thing, like, and you may be able to actually get more, like, you may be able to push it in, but then angle your camera just a little bit to look at the character as it's walking in, and then just a slow transition all the way that by the time we're at the end of it, that's pushed down a little bit more into the upper third like intersection. So you would get like the character ending up a little bit more like right here by the end of it, and starting a little bit more, you know, with a little bit more screen space too. So it would be a small change, and just like maybe a really slow camera push or a little really slow camera change, just to change the staging of the two different parts of it. I don't think I would do anything drastic. In terms of the color, I mean, I'm fine with it. You may make the character something that's not completely gray, and just add just a little bit of saturation, like some tan or something to it, just to make it stick out on some of the grays. But I don't think that it's necessary. Other comments? Yeah, let's see my hand. Okay. Nathan.
Right? Like, what's the point of giving it a name?
Susan?
I named it Susan, and everyone was like, your creature. And I'm like, but Susan.
Susan the creature.
I also don't like the chickens.
Okay, Nathan. Okay, so wait, am I right? Is this the first?
Yes.
The first one? Okay, my bad. Okay. I
You did it.
All right, cool. So again, this is the body mechanics piece. 2 minutes on the clock, as much feedback as you can, how to improve it, and go.
The right leg is a little floaty as he's coming down, as he's setting up, after he's up on the thing. So just kind of speeding it up, and kind of have it bounce off the thing as he's setting up, kind of like the left one did.
Yeah, I actually slowed that down a little, to offset them, and then I never got back to going back to changing the timing back to speed it back down.
What's going on with this block?
Like, what's the vibrating?
I think.
It's
that's
just like
just the rig.
It's just the rig.
It looks
I
really
may be
low
breaking
quality.
it in points.
Is this a viewport 2.0 or a playglass, or is this
My hardware.
huh?
Yeah.
My hardware.
My hardware, yeah. Yeah, I think that some of that may just be like, yeah, these subtle lighting things. You can probably smooth the mesh, and then when you render it, you'll see that stuff.
You might want to spin the spinal a little bit as you're going up, because it straight.
I think at some points, once his torso gets on top of the actual object, his legs, they don't dangle down anymore. Like at this point, they kind of just, it's like they're on an invisible plane at certain areas. So, and he's still getting like some movement vertically, like up, but there's no down. So having his legs dip back underneath the object a bit, like right through there, I think would help that.
The walk-in animation feels a little weird to me. It seems like the right foot is kind of like it's like kind of being pulled further away, and it makes the animation look like off balance. So I think just kind of adjusting like that one foot would definitely help sell motion a little bit better.
It sort of seems like he's like struggling to get up, so I'd like to see like he like goes through all of his poses really quickly. Like if he like is struggling to get up, maybe have him like stop for a second and like pant to just show like a little bit more like personality to it, because he doesn't hold any of his poses before immediately going to the next one.
I think when he goes to, because he tries to hit a final pose, where he puts his hand up on his head, like if he could hold that for just a sec, and then go into like, nope, and then keep going, kind of.
I think some of that, you had a little bit more breathing room in there earlier on when he flopped around, and I told him to kind of chop some of that section out. But I think it's less about like lengthening it and more about making sure you're holding a pose long enough for it to read before you're going on to the next one. It may just be making some of your moving holds a little sharper. So.
I do also want to second, I think what Tanner was talking about, with one foot like feels like it's setting up an invisible plane. I think one thing to help solve that is maybe you could have that foot kind of, I don't know what's the, words are not working for me today, but I think just kind of having the foot just like stay on the little like podium kind of thing, like kind of making it to where like foot is kind of supporting it up, kind of would help it feel like it's not just standing invisibly on air. Like maybe that foot could help to push the character up on top of it.
Are you saying for the foot to have contact with the thing?
Yes. Elijah knows words better than I do.
I think you could exaggerate the arch on his spine and neck when he comes to a rest, when he finally gets done struggling. His neck just kind of like vertical on the spine there.
You could try out doing the messing with the FK to IK switch, or vice versa. Whenever he's putting his hand on the podium, so it just stays there. I think you would have a much easier time instead of having to try to fight with that placement, just keeping the hand locked in that position.
So I'm gonna sort of use this one as a question. So somebody like volunteer to describe what happens in this animation, just the overview of it, just a short sentence of it.
I can't do it.
He's climbing up onto the object and then resting on it after he gets on top.
It's a bit of a struggle to climb.
Okay. So I think that the cool thing about this is like all this stuff to the middle here could very easily not read as a struggle. It could read as sloppy animation, but it doesn't. Right? I was like, I think we're all getting that he is struggling to get up on the thing. I think that that's a key element of this that is working well. So it's communicating. All of the little notes I think you're hearing is how to make it communicate even more. To me, the parts that I feel like I think really good notes here. One of the ones that didn't really get mentioned to me as much is I think that the walk-in. I think somebody just kind of briefly mentioned it. Feels a little strange to me. I feel like it's got like some pops.
Yeah, that felt weird to me too.
And there's something going on in his back. Like it feels like he's like walking kind of like this or something.
Yeah, definitely in the like this. I think even maybe a frame before he gets into the actual frame, I exaggerated that like too much.
Yeah, some of it may be like. Some of it may be that he's walking from so close to the camera that like you're having a hard time with foreshortening or something like that. But that would be the area that I think needs the most of that, and I think like I'm not really feeling like a jump up onto the podium. I'm feeling like it'll pop down and then he kind of pushes himself up. That's how, and so I feel like he needs a little bit more of a hop to get up to that first pose. But otherwise, I think this is looking really pretty good. So. All right, last call. All right, let's give it. Sierra was at the ready. She's like,
I was excited.
yeah, cool. Good job. I think I've said this plenty of times before. I live in terror that I'm going to forget to applaud for like a student's event, and then they're going to go home and be like, "Why didn't they clap for mine?" I get. So this one's in 2D, right? So
Seriously,
how many people did a 2D animation in this class? Just 2. Okay, that's cool.
I did one time.
You did one time. All right, let's see. Here. So one more time. Oh, wow. All right, cool. 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve this, and go.
I feel like there's a couple of frames in between the character pulling themselves up where I think they're trying to like shift the weight between like the torso and the hips, and they lose too much volume. It's really hard because I can't really pause it. Because there's only 1 or 2 where it does that.
I can pause it if you need me to.
I do know, I know the frame she's on.
Okay.
It's like where they're.
Like they're pulling.
It's like the hips are getting closer to the rib cage as during
No,
that section.
if they're getting further apart is what the problem is. So it's creating that like waistline, and it just looks like he's losing too much volume in it.
Okay.
One thing I would say is that when he's like bringing his leg up the first time, right around here, it seems a bit too slow. It should be like going like, I think maybe going like a little bit faster.
I'm actually going to disagree.
Or at least,
Because I feel like that's partially what helps it read so much as a struggle and not just I'm going over a fence but I don't want to. If that makes sense.
I think the thing that's hard for me to get is what's causing him to fall at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think too, if you were just wanting to do one of those like cartoonish falls right there, like you could exaggerate in the arms and in the rest of the body where it just looks like there's one of those random falls just for the heck of it. I think that would help it read a little bit better there.
You know, I think. So I think I kind of assumed that the idea was that the character was exhausted approaching the fence, but I think what's maybe harming that just a little bit or keeping that from reading as clearly is the stop. Because if you look at the very beginning of it, the foot is really dragging behind, but then there's this like sort of hard like stop and the character stands up straight. I think that kind of wipes some of that feeling of the character feeling tired or exhausted. Am I reading that part correctly there? Are you wanting it to feel like the character is just exhausted all the way through? Or is it something that sort of triggers the fall?
I think he's drunk.
Or yeah. Or something like that.
I think I actually read better if
Yeah.
he's drunk.
Yeah.
He's climbing over the fence and stuff.
Like, he can obviously go around,
Climb over if it's
but like he
Okay.
doesn't, so.
I agree with that because at the very beginning, also just like looking at his head, it almost looks like he's throwing himself at the ground. So if he was drunk, he might be like have looked at the ground and just started going
Okay.
down.
Yeah, like maybe he has some symbols like around his head, you know, like dizziness and stuff.
Well, if that's what's being come across, then I didn't do this right, because that's not the point of the animation.
So what was just so we can kind of see what
The point of the animation is that this is a character that doesn't want to climb the fence, and it's kind kind of forcing themselves to do it. And what
Okay.
gets them to fall is they sort of lose their balance and trip and fall over the fence. Like, that's what the foot motion was supposed to convey, that like, they weren't, they lost balance, they kind of slipped a little bit, and then they fell off the fence. But if that's not what it's reading,
I think
I'm gonna have to
they're
fix that.
confused about, wait,
And the character was not supposed to be complete, so I can do that right now.
I think they're confused about the first fall, this one where they grab onto it, not when he's falling off in general.
I think adding more slouch into it would help convey that a lot.
With the fall off the fence, you could add more, moving him over correcting. Like him starting to go to the left of the fence and over correct, and then he falls butt first. And also, I'm not sure about it, but it looks like the elbows are almost touching the ears, and it looks like the arms are bending backwards when he falls. And it could just be a perspective thing, but it doesn't look right to me.
You could do maybe whenever he does straighten up to add like a really long sigh into the moving fold or something to convey kind of a I don't want to do this kind of.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of different ways to approach this. One is there's how it's reading and the parts that are because more than one person read it as drunk. The I don't want to climb a fence is sort of a vague motivation to have or vague like, emotion to have without contextual elements beforehand, right?
It's
Like
very
that may have read
contextual.
if we had story that happened before this that led us into that, and then this would work in that way, right? Like for example, if there were multiple days of him like jumping this fence and you see him getting more and more frustrated with it. So I think that what you could do from here is decide which way you want to go. Do you want to push with what is reading, or do you want to rework the thing that's showing the exasperation? I think the exasperation, it just needs a little bit more time to read, right? Like it's that the character walks up and it's like fence, but then immediately falls. And I think that what you could do is slide that animation back a little bit and have them like sort of trudging toward it and then tripping over the feet, and like just giving it a little bit more time for that like frustration to read. In terms of an animation test or a piece for a portfolio, you just have to decide which one do you want to go forward with. Because it's not like there's a whole film before and after this that is reliant on that part reading specifically that way, when parts of it are reading, I think, really well the way it is.
Honestly, I'm not saying this to be like self-deprecating, but I kind of just want to scrap this entire thing and keep doing another one.
Fair enough.
Because I feel like I was kind of fighting a little bit too much with my reference, because I didn't, not to be over reliant on it, but I felt like that's what I was doing, and I didn't like do the best job of really selling that motion. So if I really want to get like a sort of character that doesn't want to do something, I should probably better sell it.
Well,
and I think just kind of
don't scratch it. I mean, you sell the weight well. Like I can feel himself pulling himself over, and then when he falls here, it's just the first little bit right there, kind of like.
And I do think sometimes just having some distance between it, like you've been working on this for 4 weeks now, like putting it on the hard drive, just give it a few weeks. You'll come back to it and you'll be like, oh, that's not so bad. I can fix this part here. Recognize that some of the other things, my own 2 cents, like if you're doing this as an animation test piece to show in a demo reel, one of the reasons it's probably reading as drunk is coming from the fact that he seems to be leaving, or the character seems to be leaving some storefronts, right? And so this feels like walking home at night from the bar, like, and it's because of the environment too, right? Like if you would have had this character at the top of a hill or top of a set of like really long windy steps, then people would be like, oh, like, they just don't want to climb over another obstacle, right? So I think that there are so many little ways to play with this that really I think what it needs right now is just some space. Like just give it a couple of weeks, let it set in a drawer, come back to it and then decide if you want to
But
rework
also-
it. Because I think everything from the fall on, I think the physicality and the fact that you're moving the character in depth, like you have the hips get closer to the camera while the chest goes further away and the head goes further away. That's something that I think somebody who's looking at a 2D animation demo reel would go, oh, that's hard. Like that's really hard to do, and that makes it an impressive piece for that reason. Does that make sense?
I do agree that better context is probably how so,
Yeah, and that sounds really hard, but I don't think the contextual fixes are going to be that hard. And sometimes you just change your story. Yeah,
I think also like the fact that the fence, like the end of the fence is right there.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
why doesn't he just go around it? So it kind of makes you think, what kind of, if he's not drunk, what kind of a character is this? Maybe he's like
Yeah.
goofy or, I don't know, because,
Yeah.
does that make sense? I don't
Yeah,
know.
but you could just continue that line in the background forward, and then it just feels like
To show the only way over it is to go over the fence instead of. I think you have like the weights there and like you have timing down it. It's just.
And I will say, keep in mind, like most of that critique is all on something that was not elements of the initial challenge, which is like that's more like acting. Like you have acting layered into your body mechanics, and this is acting critique, which is still 2 projects away. Like I think they're still like you'll look at this one completely different over the summer. Like you'll be like, oh, I see completely different. So, 2D animation.
love it. I
Yeah.
hate it, but I love it.
That's where I'm at right now because there's more and more people wanting to do it, and this is hard.
So you guys,
Yeah, so like now I have to
do
teach
it
it.
here.
Well, no, like we talked about this, like none of the animated short films that were up for the Academy Award were in 3D, and I'm like, huh. I mean, they were in
2D. More 2D.
Were they not 2D?
No.
Oh, more
we
2D.
need more 2D.
Yeah, and
We need to get to a point where the films in the animated category are 2D.
Exactly.
We need to get this fixed.
Well,
Or just have
was
2
it-
separate categories.
yeah. Hair Love was actually done in Toon Boom. I found that out just the other
Okay,
day.
I thought it looked like it was Toon Boom.
It is.
I also don't know, like, I don't know the program you use. I haven't used Toon Boom. But able to make the character not transparent when you show it.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I first saw it, I had to watch it a few times to process out transparency.
Answer to that. I wanted to try to get color done for this project, but I really didn't have time to do it because I spent so long on liner. The goal was to add some form of color to him, but the problem is I have to go back in and fix the lines to make everything connect. Basically, I need to temper the lines, and then I need to actually have body parts behind the fence, which is another layer I have to add. So it's a lot of work that I have to put into it, so I couldn't get around to doing color.
No, that makes sense.
I didn't know.
just had to try to-
I didn't know if it was like a bucket tool would make him all white. That would be a simple thing, or how much you have to do.
It is, but
There's
then.
a lot you have to do to it.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was just saying I had to process out transparency the first few times I watched it.
Cool.
I think the hardest thing with frame by frame 2D animation is just staying on model. I think you did a really good job at that, personally.
I kind of feel like maybe it's just because I was working on this. There's a couple frames I think I need to fix where like the legs kind of go a little bit off model when they're like moving up over the fence. Or they get a little bit too thick in some cases, and I want to be having a little bit thinner. But that's kind of easy to fix.
Cool. Let's give Ramon a hand.
I used to ride or die for 2D, but when I got in college, I was like, stylized 3D.
Stylized
is the
3D.
way.
I mean, you know what? I have somebody in my next animation class.
Is it Cat?
Oh, there is Cat. There's actually several people who are doing 2D in that class. But no, this is Ransom, and he said like he'd been doing 3D all this time, and he's like he started doing 2D, and he's like now it's just like he gets to turn his mind off and draw, and I'm like that's probably like I'm sure that's a very like divisive sentence to some people. Some people are like, I had to turn my mind on to draw. Some people are like, I just go into a zone and draw. It's two different, like some people it's like drawing is almost therapeutic. Some people it's like this challenge that really frustrates them. And it's like, it's just interesting. Like I'm really enjoying the fact that so many people are wanting to do 2D. I am intimidated by it, but working on getting better.
I don't like stealing the attention because I don't deserve it, but I.
Yeah. All right, cool. So Hayden is next. Hayden is not here, but let's go ahead.
I'm taking notes.
Taking notes for him? Okay, so let's go ahead and watch through his.
I'm trying to figure out where that rig is at. So we can say before.
Yeah, that's like a Hawaiian rig, you know? If you know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know if this is from here.
He told me that it's.
Changed to 24, or was it still 29.9? Sorry.
Do it.
Because his Maya file is 24 frames, but when you compile it into Premiere, it's still 24. I mean, is it 29.97 or 24?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you
I'm
know?
pretty sure I interpreted it 24.
Okay, I was like, why is it a little bit too fast? I don't know.
Alright. Well, I mean, that may be one of the critiques. So let's go to start the timing, or the timer on it. So 2 minutes on the clock, and go. So, Amy, you want to pick up where you're It's feeling a little fast.
Yeah, it's a little fast, but when I was like working with him most of the time, and he always like share videos to us, so we've been like looking over it. It seems fine, but I don't know why in this version it looks like it's like a little bit too fast.
I don't know.
I'm not even, go ahead.
I don't know if this rig has IK, FK switching.
That would be super useful.
Yeah,
And
that's
exploring
what it
FK
really
and IK.
See, it's kind of like, the rig is kind of weird. He didn't agree, it was kind of weird because like, especially on his foot, there's like, the toe twist and ball row wasn't painted right. So it was like really bad in my opinion.
And a lot of the controls are hidden on this rig too. Like,
Yeah,
actually,
I think
go
the rig
through
wasn't
research
really
for them.
completely finished.
I think.
No, I've looked at it, but.
I think what Hayden should have done is, if he was to do this again, is just replace this rig and just do a completely different rig. Because since everyone's like, you know.
I have talked to him about it, how like you can say it's different from another rig, but I haven't tried it yet because I need this rig to try it out.
Well, to judge just the animation as it is, I think one thing I'm really noticing is that it feels like when the character goes from like pose to pose to pose, it kind of seems like the motion is a little too even. Like it feels like there's no, I'm not getting any sense of weight with this character. It just seems like they're just kind of like evenly going from like staying over here to over here, and then they're going over there. So I think just really maybe just getting more anticipation, getting more stuff like that would help that sell more. Because when I'm looking at this, it just kind of feels a little bit too much of like a Ken doll just walking across.
So some of that may be in the parts that are not moving so well. Other comments before I jump in on this?
Seems like we just need more.
So I think the FKIK thing was definitely a big one. The couple of little things to me, the footsteps are really high, and it doesn't really feel like the torso is really changing. I think this is where your point may be getting in there too. It's like the character leans over, but then just sort of does like what feels like a normal walk to the box. And if this is supposed to feel like a sneak, it doesn't feel like he's sneaking to that box. It feels like he walks to the box.
The contact poses are a little weird on this because it seems like the character goes sharp, like when they're doing the walk cycle, they go sharply down, and then like there's not a pose where they go up, so it just kind of feels like there's something.
It's like stepping down from the stairs or something like that.
Yeah, there's something that is missing.
What would that be, so I can write in his notes?
The sharp down. Y'all mean in the hips, like when like it's
like when the character's walking?
Yeah. Oh, like the up and down on the hips.
Like
It's feeling a little too
his
intense.
weights on his hips and his shoulders are like going straight instead of like moving side to side.
Right. I think it's also like where there's so much up and down on the feet and the hips, it's reading as a stomp. It's the character stomping, which I think is probably
his toes can't bend.
Yeah, I think
that's the rake problem.
He needs a new rake.
I think it is. I think one of the biggest ways to fix it is probably a new rig. There may be ways we can find some stuff on this rig to make it better, because sometimes you still have to get a good animation out of a bad rig.
I think I like rigging, so I might like check the rig out and then pick weights and then see how. Unless he didn't preferences, that would actually.
No, you can transfer from the same rig to another rig pretty easily.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I did that before, so I was just trying. I told him I can help him with that.
I also kind of think that like the pose for the characters like hiding behind the block, I'm sure that's probably just like the person fighting with Rick. But that pose kind of seems a little too like weird. Like I think like I don't.
It's that pelvis doesn't really have
Yeah,
good control.
that doesn't feel natural. But I think also it probably like if I were, I'm just thinking like if I were doing this motion, I wouldn't like do that. I would probably like my entire body would be hiding behind the block, and maybe I would peek up a little bit to see if like the coast is clear. It just that motion that is going on right now doesn't seem nice.
So I think there's a lot of takeaways on this one. So I think one of the things for everybody else not Hayden, and Hayden as well, to recognize though is like if it is a rig issue, like sometimes that's something you almost need to test before you jump into. I mean, this is a 4-week project that like maybe you need to go through and just try to move all the parts on the rig just to see how they're going to move and see if you're really comfortable getting into this 4-week relationship with this rig. Right? Like you get that, you got to have the first date right with this rig and be like, no.
Just like a general issue with the scene.
Yeah.
There's like a clear corner back here and this wall coming off, and it's like he's just gonna walk straight into the wall.
Yeah.
Like,
The scene doesn't.
maybe this back wall should just go. Yeah, it's like he's gonna walk straight into the wall. So maybe you could like blow that wall out and just like make the back wall flat.
There's a weird thing about the perspective of this scene. It seems like the character. It seems like the scene looks very flat, but it seems like based off of what the scene looks like, that the character should be walking like towards the screen to the block. It just seems like the environment of this seems flat and seems 3-dimensional at the same time, which makes the motions feel even weirder.
All right, let's give Hayden a hand wherever he is. I hope he gets to feeling better. I hope this critique doesn't make his headache worse.
Okay.
Greg says feel better. Exactly. All right. So Tanner,
I have some sound effects on this.
Got some sound.
Just a little bit.
Let's see if I get. All right. We'll keep those sound effects because they're. Okay, so 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve this. Hey, go.
So that pose, the second one that she does. Now I'm no sword fighting master. She looks very off balance, and I feel like it's odd because she also has a sword.
Right.
So I feel like that pose would be fine, like in dancing ones, or she's just standing weird. But if she's about to attack, I don't know. That's just not my favorite pose.
It was mainly just in order to keep a good line of action going, but I think I could push her like hips and torso forward a bit more in that.
Maybe push those back legs just a little bit. Just push it. Could solve.
Are you talking about this one right there?
Yeah, just put both of like perfect wide. Just move back a little bit and see if that makes it feel more on that.
Right. Like
when the character is swinging the swords, I think there's a little bit too much of a pause between
between one stance and the other stance?
Yeah, I think that space can probably be used for more anticipation to get into the next pose. Because it just kind of seems like sword swings, they kind of just awkwardly stand for a little bit. Next swing, awkward, and then goes into the final pose.
Okay. Yeah.
I kind of agree on specifically the first one. Although I actually like where that pose is going. I can see pushing it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I like the just like doing that look over the shoulder thing. But it does feel much. It feels like striking a pose
Yeah.
for those, and I think it needs just a little bit more. It's like there's a rhythm that's missing. Right? So
Mhm.
if you think of animation timing, like music timing, you know, if it's just a solid beat that's at a regular interval, like dum 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 dum,
Right.
I think it's very kind of dull, and you want to break that up and have like some more like changes in that. You know, maybe
Okay.
like some little like runs in the middle of it that speed up a little section. And I feel like right now it's feeling like beat, 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 span, beat.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's playing with that texture in the middle. Now it could be a couple of different things that you can use to fix that, right? Like maybe you'll have her hit that pose, but then maybe she does like a quick like hand like twirl with the sword behind her to get that, you know, to have a reason to be there.
Yes.
But I think the other thing could be just like do another timing pass on it and see how you're feeling about like if you just speed that up, and it could be like if that's a triple attack, it could be like big attack, attack, attack. You know, like a faster, like that she holds that and then does like two quick attacks.
Or even the reverse of that, where I have the first two strikes quick, and then the spin final.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
What you can also do for that is that maybe in between like one's pause, like the second pause,
Mhm.
is maybe give her face something to do, or maybe
Okay.
give her like, you know, give her like ready to more anticipation for like, you know, to swing that sword back.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah.
you know.
For sure. Okay.
This is kind of unrelated to the animation, but like the shining blade thing,
Mhm.
I would maybe just like bevel that shape so it
Mhm.
looks like it's more of a sword.
Okay,
So
yeah.
just like bevel instead of it being those harsh edges.
Mhm.
I think that would go a long way.
Okay.
But I like the idea that it looks really cool.
I know we talked about this the other day, but I still think, I see you fixed it just a little bit, but I think you should still make the foot drag a lot more on that.
On the first one, the first strike that we talked about, yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I think that's where a lot of problems are arising that you and Sierra are talking about. Because like I can still push that pose and maintain her line of action or from the foot to the top of her head.
Yeah.
If I just push the hip forward a bit more and increase that foot sliding forward more to like stop her action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is very, I like the style you got going on here. I like your overlapping action a lot. It feels like somewhere in the putting the overlapping action in, you may have muddied some of the poses just a little bit at times, that you could sort of push. So one of the ones that kind of strike me is when she goes into that low second swipe that she does, it feels like you really need to lead that with a foot, right? And it feels like that foot kind of slides in there, and I think you could almost curl her whole line of action to kind of like swoop into that pose.
Okay.
And I think that's just like after you've done all the offsetting and everything, sometimes you just have to go back in there and make those poses happen. It's little things like that that I think you could use to kind of clear up some of the poses on the transitions just a little bit.
Okay.
But I love the exaggeration to all of it. Did you run into this with motion blur?
I tried, but it didn't come through. I don't think. I might
Let's
do
try
some
pausing
motion
it.
blur in post. Yeah.
There's a nice place to pause it.
Yeah, you should see it in that camera movement.
Yeah, that's reading pretty crisp. So
Yeah.
I think the motion blur will help in some of these poses quite a bit.
Also, I noticed on right after the first pose, her little satchel moves back into place, like very slowly. Like right when she takes the place from the first pose, so right after this, it just moves back onto her back, very slowly.
Okay, yeah.
I think one of the main problems is that we don't know how tight it is on her belt, so.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a separate control just for the bag itself.
There probably is.
There is.
I haven't touched it any though.
There's a, there's so many freaking things on
There is.
There is.
This rig has a lot of control to it that you can do.
I think, maybe it's a small thing, but I think maybe pushing some of the facial expressions could help like better sell the emotions that she's trying to convey. 'Cause I feel like I know what you're trying to do with some of these poses, but they feel like a little too like scared. It feels like you're trying to react to especially the first pose when she's looking to the camera and she gives a little bit of a smirk. It feels like you're trying to make. I get the idea you're trying to do, but it feels a little too pulled back.
Okay, so maybe push those a bit more.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, I think you could read them more clearly in the play glass. And that's one of the things that happens sometimes you render it, and you're just like, oh.
That's actually true. I was like, because I think just the way the soft shadows cast, like in a render, it kind of messes with some things, like how the lip looks and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And you're in portfolio, right?
Yes.
Yeah. This one, we tightened this one up. I think this will be a really nice portfolio piece. You got some strong poses. You got some nice overlapping action. Now, I think hit that timing really good, and I think we're and get a nice like stylized render with some of that motion blur, maybe a little bit of extra stuff in there. I think you got some cool stuff going on. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you need audio or anything? I can't remember which one.
I'm
drawing a blank right now.
Whenever it's going to the second pose, because I
Does it
feel like
open
the
that?
first one that doesn't like soften.
There it
The
goes.
second one feels like it.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I will say Linky was actually probably nicer. I think it was.
Alright. So, 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can. So, are you kind of going more for a cycle on this, or are you wanting this to eventually be like a series of events? Or is it more like just to get the cycle working? Just one. So, all right. So 2 minutes on the clock. I just kind of like giving for the projects that are people doing it the second time. I like to give a little bit of a synopsis of it. So, thinking about quadruped walk, 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can give, and go.
I guess I'll start out. It might be the camera angle, so don't take this to heart, but I feel like the front two legs, they're too far apart. The more I look at them, more they look like human hands. That's absolutely terrifying. Yeah, I feel like they should, when they walk, slightly like press together, kind of like when you walk in a straight line, and you kind of like rotate the front. Does that make sense? Is that correct? Is that how dogs walk?
I kind of agree, because I think that you'd have to shift the weight less that way. So
They look very far apart.
I think something that could help sell the upper torso in general is getting more movement in the shoulders and rib cage a bit, because they're kind of static right
That's
now.
what I was saying, kind of like shift it.
Yeah.
You can see that in the back, like if you just, I think it's the opposite way of the back, right?
I think the backside has a good range of motion right now.
Yeah.
But getting more up on the torso part would benefit it a lot.
I think it follows the opposite motion. I mean,
yeah, if this part comes forward, then that goes back or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think is how it works.
When you were doing this animation, were you looking at reference at all? The thing that stands out to me is just the paws especially are very stiff. When he's walking, he's like, I don't know exactly what part that's called, but it's just like, sticking out.
It's the whole hand sort of never feels like it
it
changes
should
shape.
be rotating alongside the paws. To me, it just kind of looks like he's just kind of on his, it looks like he's on his toes most of the time. There's no rotation in the paw movement, so just trying to get there should be a control in there somewhere. I never used this rig before, but most animal rigs have that control where you can move that leg so that way it follows the paw. That's kind of the biggest thing that popped out to me.
Yeah, I think one of the things it's always, these are always hard, but I think one of the things to remember is that like, with dogs, horses, like a lot of quadrupeds, it's really like they're walking on their tiptoes, and I think it's like figuring out how to show that. So. Okay, other comments?
Whenever it's walking, both legs on one side are going at the same time. And so they have to be offset. So like the front right paw would move, and then the back left paw would move to keep it balanced.
It feels like they're a little offset, but I think it may need to be a little.
They are a little bit, but
yeah.
Like whenever it's the right side, so whenever the right side pretty much picks up, the dog should fall over, like 100%. It should fall over. Both of his paws are off the ground at the same time.
Yeah.
So the diagonal leg should be on the ground at the same time to keep its center of mass together.
Yeah, I think that's also it's also leading to a little bit of that feeling like not feeling grounded, like the paws would feel more like they're stuck to the ground at times, and I think that it feels like I think you're right. It's like kind of throwing the weight off. I think it put some. You probably already looked at them. The videos up in D2L. They kind of show, one of them I think shows the paw patterns of like when they would hit, and it just feels like it's a little off on that. So, actually I think that's good.
I was about to say that the upper body is kind of stiff. Like you were moving the shoulder, but the clavicle region is not moving along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can kind of see this like if you look at like right there where that bend is happening, but you're not feeling it up in the back as much. So I think if we getting a little bit more of that, it'll help.
I love his tongue.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something you must have done last minute because I don't remember seeing it last time, but it's good.
Me and Michael were talking about this. There might be like a subtle curve in the feet, like whenever they place, it looks like
tiny bit of
just
a wall.
just a slight bit. So it might be just like slightly curved or something like that.
I can see that.
You want to take a look at those.
All right. Check. Don't let me forget to go back up here on the top.
Yeah.
And if anybody else put any in there and I missed, oh yeah, Dusty's is in there too. Okay. So don't let me skip those. So. Oh.
Is that what you named him?
No, his name's not Mac and Cheese.
Him the name of Mac and Cheese, baby?
I call him a demon. That was the time I'm trying to. Oh.
Hell,
her name's Mac and
Cheese.
Mac and Cheese
It
demon.
came out really well.
Yeah, saying it with the tail
It
now.
came out really well. I know you're having problems with that rig.
Yeah, it was a nightmare, but
Saying with the tail now, it looks a lot. Yeah.
that was awful too. Yes, everything was just so hard. But,
Quadrupeds are hard.
yeah.
2 minutes on the clock, as much feedback as you can on how to improve it, and go.
I want to start with I love it. I saw it maybe a week ago, and it looked more like it was prancing than running. And it's completely different now. I love the break in the torso. I think that's really fun and just visually nice to watch because you're playing with the low polys. It's nice. You did a good job. I think it works well.
I still think it could be sped up a little bit to come across as more run.
Yeah.
It's kind of like just hopping right.
We talked about that. Yeah.
one thing I want to add is that next time you rendering this out, is have this thing in it, but also have like just regular shots without the camera moving about so we can see it better. Cause it's,
I will say just knowing, seeing the progress clips, having that head, the head movement is a lot nicer now.
It wasn't twitching no more.
Yeah, it wasn't twitching anymore, and it feels really appropriate.
I think, yeah, the tail does add a lot. I think you could push it just a bit more though, like the base of the tail it's still a little bit static, so having it raise up a bit more during those like high arches that it takes. And then as well with the end of the tail, when it flicks back up, having it bend down a bit more. Because it's still maintaining an arc that isn't like quite right for how it would probably move.
Okay.
But pushing that just a bit more, I think would benefit it a lot.
Just thinking based on my memory of the reference you used, I remember its head was more of like an arc, cause I remember commenting about it, like the head is much better than before, but I feel like you can push it a little bit more into like more of a curve arc. I don't know, probably have to go back to the reference scene, but it is probably just my bad memory.
Mac and cheese. Hey Jerry.
Yeah.
So I know there's offset and all the pause, but for me, the front one is not reading as strong as the back. And I can see the offset in the back. It looks fine, but like it's just, and maybe just because of the motion blur too. Like it looks like he's almost slamming it with both his hands at the same time. Which they technically do, but I think it would read a little bit better if you offset it, but maybe it's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So something I don't notice it until we're looking at the tiger, saber tooth, whatever it is, from the back, at how far apart the back feet are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's because you're kind of pulling it from that like hobby reference.
Yeah.
So here's what my thoughts are. I think keep this one, and then make a duplicate of this file and go in there and see if you can alter this into being a slightly different run too.
Right.
I think you can get two
Really
pieces
use
out of it.
animation layers to do that.
Yeah, you can use animation layers, maybe speed it up just a little bit, but then use some animation layers to really push those feet closer together, maybe like, make it seem like it's going faster, but staying a little like leveler, and then showing those like back to back in your demo reel, I think would be a neat way of showing it. You don't have to, but, or even showing them side by side at the same time, might be a neat way of comparing it, so. But yeah, this is reading much more clearly than the last few I saw. So.
I was talking to Tanner the other day, and we were talking about like how the legs were separated. I'm like, I can't get it to look like a run. I should just bend out the knees. I'm like, why did I never think of that? To make it like look like a run. So after this, I'm gonna like go back and try to do more of a run with it and just bend out the knees. I don't know why that was not my first thought, but yeah.
Cool.
Be your own reference. Yeah, seriously.
It's got some really nice squishiness to it though. That's good. Let's give him a hand.
Were you filming
No, but it would have been funny.
I would have loved it.
It would have lengthened that blackmail folder.
Okay, Michael.
Oh, you actually rendered it out.
Cool.
Yeah, there's that IKFK hitch I was telling you about.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing that a little bit.
Spaghetti legs.
Okay, 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve this, and go.
I got a second after.
He's a stretchy boy.
I talk a lot. I kind of feel bad. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, wait. Let me get my notes out actually.
Okay.
But yes, he's alright.
No, you're good. Let me send you a parkour video. It's like a how-to, and this guy goes on for like 30 minutes on different ways how to jump over a fence. So you kind of start it, because I think you did the reference yourself.
Yes.
But there's one technique, I don't know the name because I don't care about parkour, but you pretty much do that angle that you have at him where he's completely off to the side, but you keep his feet down, make that stretchy.
Yeah.
I could probably draw it out a little bit
Are
better.
you talking about the Kong jump? Where
No, it's like he like shifts his whole body so his knees are this way. And his,
Oh no, yeah, I know what you're talking
yeah.
about. Yeah.
I feel like that would work really well with this
Mhm.
because you already have the torso in that position. You would just need to shift the legs too.
Yeah.
And that would change the jump a little bit more from I'm jumping to I'm trying to look cool while I'm jumping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is going in a really good direction. I think he might hold those stretch frames for just like a frame or two too long. They're just there for just a little bit too long. But I like that the motion that they have going on there. I would also adjust the silhouette he has when he lands, specifically with his legs, because they are like really similar when he lands, specifically in the feet. They're really similar in pose, and maybe you could just space them out away from each other a bit more when they land. Or alter the timing of when they hit, because they do hit at a different time, but it's not like super significant.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that on the timing again?
Just adjust the timing on the feet to like have them hit a little bit later from one another.
Okay.
Like have his right foot hit first and then the left foot, and you have that going on, but just space it out a bit more.
I would also like to add, like maybe have like a more greater impact on the feet itself. I think because look, is it on his tippy toes? Yeah.
Yes.
Tippy toes. Yeah.
Yeah, they feel like they land the feet feel like they land just a little soft.
Okay.
And I think maybe just breaking some tangents or getting your spacing right before that impact.
Okay.
I think maybe squashing a little bit more too.
Are you trying to do squash and stretch with this animation?
Yes.
That's, okay, I think the squash and stretch could be a little bit better, because I'm noticing, in some of them, it seems like you don't have there should be, like the big thing with squash and stretch is that there needs to be a little bit of time to sort of settle, like when you have like the character, like say if the character was jumping over something, the legs would kind of like stretch a little bit when they're about to jump over something, but then there's a pose where they settle. I think there should be like a little bit more settle in this animation, because it just seems like, to me, it just seems like you kind of elongated the legs for one of the poses, and it just looks a little weird to me. So I'd say if you're trying, yeah. So there.
Yeah, I think squash and stretch is almost something you can do as its own pass. Like sometimes, not completely, but I mean, I think you could do a pass that you go through the animation just focusing on the squash and stretch, recognizing that it's going to mess up other things.
Yes.
But then you go back and do a pass to fix those other things.
Yes, that was actually my fight with this whole thing, was that I was doing passes and then I had to go back to previous passes and fix problems that happened, and yeah. But I mean, I had fun with it.
I think one thing with like where he's like going up to kind of get more of that like slinky that we were talking about. That
the chest first, then legs.
Yeah, and just make those like legs like jump up. It feels like he stretches out, and then
are you
his
saying
legs come.
The legs should have a bit more of a snap to it?
Or I guess in the sense it should. I don't know. I think I just have to look at like frame by frame, but it feels like he stretches out, and then everything like comes over and just like squashes out. But I feel like he should stretch out, legs, whoop, and then.
Yeah, so the timing on the stretch, on the squash, yeah, I know what you mean,
Another just really quick note, I feel like the camera motion, like,
oh, that was super last minute.
yeah, it feels super last minute.
Yeah.
I think it's like, it feels like one motion, another motion.
Yeah, it was super last minute.
That would be something that you kind of go through and
I
polish on.
think the camera works better when it stops after it pulls back, because when it kind of like adjusts to this one, it seems a little weird. I think just this one works well enough to convey the motion that the character's jumping over the fence.
I agree.
So, I don't know if you were trying to do this on purpose, but his head never really looks where he's gonna go. Until he's already in the air.
Yes. That was part of the reference thing.
Okay.
That's like context that my group basically knows.
Okay.
Because in my reference, I was constantly looking to the right because there was a woman spying on me.
I wouldn't. You don't have to.
Yeah, I know. But
I would change that, because when you're gonna jump towards something, you don't blindly jump. You're gonna look before you jump.
IRL. Granted, I was doing the motion like 20 times.
Also, when he lands, make sure you put his heels down, because there's no way for you to absorb all. I mean, you can, but I would put them down. Even if they don't touch the ground, like they could absorb it just a little bit.
Like a bounce.
It'll make the impact heavier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just my eyes. Right when he's like in the air, there's a little twitch on his left arm.
Yeah, that's the IKFK
Yeah.
thing that I had going on.
Yeah.
It happens on both arms.
Yeah, that's a pass toward the end there. I think we can work those out. All right, cool. Yeah, I think this one, like I think you've got a lot of good stuff in here. I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of people will come away from this with, is that not done. You just run out of time.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it.
And I think that you'll. So there's another thing that I think I would chime in here that's more of like a technique, and I didn't want to. Different people work different ways, but one of the things that's really helpful for some people is to focus on it one section at a time instead of the entire animation at a time.
That's a good idea.
So you focus in like to maybe like 30 frames, and you just get those 30 frames perfect.
Okay.
And then you focus into the next 30 frames, and you get those next 30 frames perfect.
I'll try that.
And I think that this is a good spot to be at to go in and start that process.
So just look at single 30 frames and just try to get those really good.
Yeah.
I do that on
I didn't think of doing that.
I did like 50 frames and then.
Yeah, hold on a second. I think we got sort of a rumble going. Go ahead.
I don't know how helpful this is, but like, coming from my perspective of doing 2D animation, typically I don't do like straight ahead stuff. What I do is I focus on like particular sections of the scene and get that to work perfectly. So like I get the motion from like this to work right,
B
and
to
then
B.
like A to B to work right, and then everything in between that. And then once that's good, I focus on the next section or whatever other section I want to do that's struggling.
Gotcha. All right, yeah. I think you're in a good spot on this. Just keep polishing on it. Yeah, that's good, man.
If there's extra time, can we take a look at it real quick?
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
That should be an easy fix. Yeah, because it's on its way. It's really good.
So just real quick on that before you start critiquing the frame, I was messing around with that for fun, but like I was just pulling it up and down as I was going, and I thought I got rid of it.
Yeah.
But I forgot to get rid of the very last keyframe, and I didn't want to re-render. Just so y'all know. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah.
Spooked me.
Cool. So 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve this, and go.
I know that we've been out for a couple of times, but it's much better than it was before. There's like little foot slidings in the beginning and definitely near the end right there. And it feels like his spines are lacking a little bit in some areas. I don't know, just
There's like at the beginning there, you can see the left foot slightly is floating. I would just push that down a bit, and they'll be out of the way. But I think with some of these poses, if you just embraced with the foot, like the heel, or not the heel, the toes, if you just held on those toes, that would go a long way. So yeah, it just like puts his heel up. If that makes sense.
So I'm gonna be that guy and asking, what exactly were you trying to do? Like, I don't really understand like the whole like thing you're trying to do. Is it just like going around like run and then chip and then like because I saw your project, I glanced at it and I thought it was gonna like go around a circle. Like, is there a circle to it?
No, it's just if it like a ledge and he's just
Like,
trying
is
to
he
run.
wall running? Is that what he's kind of doing?
No, okay, so it's just like a divot, and he's trying to he couldn't feel where it is, so he's just guessing.
Okay.
I think you could, this is unrelated to the actual animation, but having the different environment elements a different color from each other, because it's kind of hard to see some of the spots he's jumping to, and just on animation, put a little bit more overlapping action and like just separation of when certain limbs hit, because he's kind of just going from pose to pose to pose at some spots.
I think how Elijah did with his is I would recommend here where the shapes, or not the shapes, the colors are just slightly different tones of gray and black. So I think that would go a long way of like making that distinction.
So I think my big note on this one is the weight. Like it feels like kind of off to me, like sort of the weight and the momentum. So like the little weight shifts as the character stands up. Like right here, as we sort of pan around to the front, we'll see that the character's kind of leaning over in a way that like feels like they've thrown them off balance, that they would fall. But then like, so if this is sort of the character's mass as they're moving forward, like the character starts running and then it just feels like it stops and like hits a wall. And I think that even if you trip over something, you still have that momentum moving forward that has to kind of ease to a stop or like bounce off of something if it's going to come to a sudden stop. And you can kind of see like he hits the ground and it just like freezes, and then kind of the steps, I feel like they're hitting, it's a phrase that animators use, it hits a wall. It feels like the hips are kind of hitting walls when they move to stuff instead of easing in or overshooting. So I think I would kind of go back to the root control or the hip control, and do another pass on that to make sure you're really getting the weight down. I think that's going to help a lot of stuff fall into place. So. All right. Any other last minute comments on this one?
I think at the end part, like right here, you can do like a bit more like got the word for it, expressing like how he's like tied, you know, like really lean backwards and have his arm, you know, like really hanging out and his head like pointing upwards.
Like exaggerating it?
Yeah.
Cool. That's good, man.
Hayden says thank you. Oh. I don't know what for, but he says thanks.
Tell him. Thank you. Okay, Nick. Let's go ahead and play this if you have.
I don't know why I put those extra stuff from the beginning and end. I was like, what you doing?
Bad habit, or just habits.
So 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve it. Go.
There's a part in it where it looks like his leg is starting to clip through the like wall.
It's
yeah, like right when he's going over, like it looks
Oh,
right
yeah,
there.
okay,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
legs going into it.
I think to better sell the action of the character falling over the fence, what you should do is you should kind of hold the pose of them like dangling over the front side of the fence, and then like their weight kind of like shifts a little, and then they go like straight fall down, because it seems like there's not enough lead in to that motion, so it just seems like it's a little too.
Yeah, there's some complicated physics that kind of happens there, because when his feet hit the ground and he's still kind of holding himself there, you would get this hesitation of the fall and then a speed back up.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah.
That's actually what I was about to say too, because like something felt off about the speed of the fall itself.
I would like to add that that part was all improvised because the reference I had my hand both dangling at that part, and I decided not to use that part of the reference because that was like you know where the little ramp that goes up sideways, that's at Cricket, and that's where I got my reference from. So, but yeah, I see. Yeah, I see.
The fall to me feels like it's really soft. Like he doesn't. It looks like he's gonna fall hard, but then he doesn't.
Yeah.
And it also looks like he doesn't hit the ground all the way. So I would just have him like.
Oh, I didn't see that until the end.
Yeah. I really want that. What I can fall really fast.
One thing that might sell the weights of the fall is maybe you can have a pose where the character's like kind of like bouncing up in the air and then like slants down to indicate that like this was a heavy fall, because things things don't just like fall and then stand down.
We're gonna say something?
Yeah, I'm gonna say some nitpicky things. I guess we'll start with the composition. You have everything in that corner, which isn't bad per se in the beginning, but he falls so close to that wall that now everything to the left is just negative space, and it doesn't really contribute. So you could just shift it to the right or bring it in, and that would help your composition a lot. Secondly, when his hand reaches up, I timed it horribly because now we're at the end. It is odd.
Which
I think
hand?
it's the shoulder. You see that one where he's thrusting his entire body because you're moving his torso and his hand. When really you probably want more of like this like really like creepy sneak up grab instead of like a full thrust. Yeah.
Because I was going for like something like this and something like that.
Yeah, that's what you have. I just feel like that doesn't go with the sneaky, because like he's trying to sneak over.
He's not trying to sneak over.
He's not?
No, it's more like say an exhausting like he's tired and stuff, like so he's climbing over so very slowly. But I wanted to add like say some movements to show like he's breathing heavily when he like get close to it. But I was like, nah, too much
You
time.
might want to add some motions to convey that, because I also got that conception that like the character was sneaking over the fence.
So even if he is exhausted again, he probably wouldn't thrust his entire torso.
So why is that reading as sneaky?
Because the character like pops up over the fence first,
And then he's looking side to side too.
The short context.
Yeah, there's lots of like anxiety that you can see in the character via just head motions. There's that.
Yeah, I kind of thought of it as sneaking, like he's trying to hide from somebody or running away from somebody. Like this feels like one of those shots like where they've been chasing them, and you know, like the character runs by, and then you see the character like peek out.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, it kind of has that feel.
Like he's trying to be all like they're playing hide and seek, and he's just really bad.
He's really bad at, like me.
I know, like this is something I would do.
Yeah, exactly.
He's also kind of looking back as he goes over the wall, like maybe there's like something back there he's running from, or.
From my own personal experience, that was just me because like just the rotation of my body leading.
Sorry, was someone else going to say something?
Well, I think Elijah has his hand up a minute ago.
I was going to make a comment about it being a groundhog plus the sneaky, but you stated it before, so.
Yeah, I think if you still want to have like the quick action of him putting his hand up there, you should implement what you're doing in the fingers, because when he puts his hand down with his fingers, they're bending back and slapping forward. And I think you should do that for the whole arm, because right now his arm, he kind of just goes like this. It should be more of like it goes up and then it waves down with how the fingers are going like that. And you can still have that like really fast motion, and I think it'll benefit it a lot.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with the animation, but I would change the color of the ground because
Yeah.
it reads to me as water.
Those
It's climbing out of the swimming pool and into the ocean.
Yeah, those were all last minute. Just imagine you had just one brain cell just working at this point, and you just.
Yeah, I would just change the color to not blue.
Yeah, I would. I regret it.
All right, cool. Parker.
Doogie!
You needed to include those sound effects with it.
He does like live Foley artists.
Yeah. All right. So 2 minutes. Are you going to credit the fire hydrant?
Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, the fire hydrant was provided courtesy of Elijah over there.
Wow.
Nice hydrant.
It's so good.
So let's critique this fire hydrant.
It really stills the scene, actually.
So Okay, so and that's actually something really interesting about it. It feels almost like stop motion because of the materials. Like it's like really nice lighting, but cartoony like.
It's getting into that
shading.
almost, it feels almost like tilt shift.
Yeah. Oh, we get that like blur in the background.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 minutes on the clock. Let's give them as much feedback as we can on how to improve it. And go.
One thing I would do is bring the entire rig of the dog just slightly down because it's floating.
Huh? Yes, he is floating.
I think he's magical.
Huh?
Thank
you.
He's smashing.
I mean, he's not, but he.
Oh,
he'll
did
say-
someone let? Oh, my friend.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, someone let
Oh,
her friend?
okay.
He should have a key.
Did you want to say something?
I can say many things.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll go next.
So I will start with. He looks so much better in color.
Doesn't he?
Oh my goodness. So
Like you can see the thing, like there's potential. It's not there yet, but
well, you see,
there's
the problem
something.
with every single one we've seen so far was there was no shadows, so his legs would blur into one another.
Yes.
So now that you actually have it rendered out, it's no longer reading as a weird limp. I mean, I guess because he doesn't really have toes, maybe a little bit, but.
I also offset the body a little bit, and by like the front and back legs, but then also by doing that, there's more like one of the things was like his feet are too close together, so I spaced them out, and then when I offset them, it was like, oh, now there's a lot of space between them, and it like stretches them out even more. So I'll have to change that a little bit. But sorry, did not mean to cut you off. I was just
No, you're good. Pretty much what I wanted to say was that problem that I was having before it's now gone via color and lighting.
Good.
One thing that's really standing out to me is your character has this like lightly kind of bouncy motion to them, and then directly when they like lift their leg up on the hydrant, the character just kind of just stands just dead.
And that is because that I just
That's the aesthetic you wanted.
I'm not defending myself. It's just he's dead. He's died.
For me, he's very bouncy, and I think that looked great. And I think you should look, like, specifically when he first looks at the hydrant and then looks at it from a different perspective, from here to there. I think there should be a bit more, like, bobbliness between those two poses, or when he hits that third pose there.
Where, right there?
It's from this one to there. He snaps into that pose kind of hard. And having a little bit more overlap on that one, I think, like maybe just like moving his shoulders a bit when his head gets into place.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would help a lot. And have you done any controls on the tail?
I was not setting an animation on the tail. There are controls on it, and it's got some cool FK. But
Yeah. I would mess around with that.
I think
It does have a little charm.
I think the stiff tail works for that pose right there.
when the character looks like at the last post when they look curiously at the fire hydrant, I think just kind of to differentiate between the first curious pose, maybe you could raise the chest up a little bit so like they look like they're really confused as they look like, oh, what's this? It just feels like there's not enough to differentiate the two confusion poses. Like, I don't know, but that's just me, I guess.
So you know what some of the things I'm kind of noticing is like some of the little bouncy elements to it feel like they're in one channel or another, and like so like the little springiness here when he bops back kind of feels like he goes straight up and down.
It's just the Y.
Yeah, it's just the Y, and so I think that's really where it needs some help. Is like I think not only does it need to be springy in all axes, including the rotation, it also needs to be hitting those at different times. So like the rotate Y maybe needs to hit at a different time than the rotate X. And so what that's going to give you is like a really loose bobbliness to it. And I think
So
then
you mean
that,
like kind of like instead of just.
well, it's more like just like like instead of just like that and like springiness, right? You'll get like this like little jiggle to it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that really that's gonna. I think that's kind of that's a thing I would look at throughout it is like, you know, more rotation, more just small little curves on all of that, and how the offset happens on it. So.
Do you feel better about it though, Greg?
I feel better about it.
Okay.
So here's the thing: if you would
thinking-
hand this off to me right now, I
Uh-huh.
could make this look really good,
Yeah.
but I'm not allowed. So you got to do it. So really,
But
my
there's
concern-
potential.
There's potential
That's
there.
good.
There was always potential there. It's like, but
I
I
was
mean,
just really worried because I'm like, I spent.
Can I say something very, very minor?
Yes.
I spent so much time modeling it and rigging it, and then I'm like, I've spent 2 months, and here I am animating it, and it's just gonna be a bunch of crap. But no.
What's it? We'll work on it here.
Yeah.
Parker.
What?
Yeah, Parker's. He didn't realize you were giving critique. So, oh yeah. So what were you saying on it? A small thing.
I was just gonna say, like, your entire motion and your scene gives off this very like cartoonish, borderline Saturday morning cartoon look to it, and then you have this realistic fire hydrant, and to me that kind of just like my attention kind of just squarely goes to that fire hydrant. Like I know it's really hard to model those things, so it's probably just easier to dump in a realistic one. But to me, it just seems like that fire hydrant kind of needs to be better incorporated into the scene, or have the rest of your environment better fit that.
Well, it's also the only shiny thing in the scene. So maybe just pulling back some of that shine on it. As much as I know you put a lot of work into it, simplifying it a little bit. Like you may just grab all the mesh and just like run a simplify or reduce mesh on it, just to get it a little less like detailed. Because all the little detailed elements.
There will also be fur on Sully. So his name is Sully. I named my real dog after Sullivan from Monsters Inc. And so I made this dog after my dog. So this is like another Sully. And so he's gonna have fur. When? I don't know. But he will have fur.
In the future.
In the future.
Are you gonna make it like a simulation type fur, or like
I'm
controls?
thinking about either doing my interactive group splines, or I'm gonna try to do it in Houdini.
Okay.
Because I want to learn more Houdini, but it just depends on it depends.
It depends.
Yes, there's potential.
There's potential.
There's potential.
That's all I want to hear.
We can make.
There's
There's always potential.
I feel,
We're here to work on the execution.
you know what I feel like back there, Greg? I feel like I'm in this lifeboat, like Wilson, and I'm just drifting off the sea. And you're like, Parker, this is your last semester. What the heck? And like,
We got this, Parker.
we got this.
Into the nose, out the mouth. All right, let's give him a hand. It's lifeboat. Right. Samira?
The next
Cool. So 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve this, and go.
When the character jumps down and makes contact with the ground, I feel like the first thing that should land is the feet, because what they're doing is they have the hand go down first, and to me that feels a little off.
It almost looks like they land like halfway in midair. Like they've already made their land and then they land.
Yeah, I feel like you probably are. It feels like there needs to be another breakdown key where like the tips of the toes hit first, and then you collapse into the knees. Other comments?
There seems to be a snap in between when the character jumps, like when the character moves up and then starts to walk. I think that should be kind of fixed up a little bit.
Yeah, that feels like there's parts of it still in step mode, or something's transitioning over one key.
Yeah.
I'll point out that the amount of energy in the beginning of the jump and how far he goes don't seem to be even. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
So
he
do you
kind
think
of,
it
it looks
too
more
far?
like a gentle hop off of a thing. So I'm like just kind of like stepping down with a little bit of momentum, and he's going, I would say, in reference about 2 feet to the right.
So either more energy into the jump to take him that far, or
Just
less
shift to-
far
yeah.
on the drum?
I think the less far would probably be better, because that would probably give a little bit more time for the character to actually walk, because it seems like they're trying to walk a little. I don't know if they're trying to do like a full walk cycle, but it seems like they're trying to cover great distance in small steps.
Yeah. Okay. Other comments?
Is it the first time we did it in 2 minutes?
I think so. Let's still have a couple. I think one more thing you can kind of look at is, and this is kind of I think everybody can kind of take a moment and look at your own piece in this regard too. Is just the staging of it. So right now, like how much stuff we're able to see versus how much stuff we need to see. Like it feels like we're kind of the camera's kind of far away. Right, so I think I would just push the camera in a little bit more and get a little bit closer on the staging. It still feels to me like there's some breakdown keys that are missing, and like some polish on the curves that's missing just to kind of get all those transitions you're trying to hit to work correctly. So.
I think in my opinion there should be before the character hops up, there should be a little bit more anticipation as they go, because it feels like they just like suddenly jump. So there should be a little bit of time to let us communicate, like, oh, they're about to hop over something.
Yeah, and this may be. I think that's everybody kind of has to learn that sweet spot for them of when you jump from blocking plus to splining. This to me feels like maybe you went to splining a little early, and you still need more keyframes in the blocking plus stage, which is still fixable. You just go in there and put in those keyframes where you need them, and you just have to do a little bit more work in the graph editor after that. So, all right, cool. Oh, let's go in. Okay.
And now Sierra.
Oh, cool. All right, 2 minutes on the clock. As much feedback as you can on how to improve this. And go.
I would suggest more, I don't know if you would call it balance, like whenever you're picking up those weights, especially since that one's heavy for that character, you just kind of like sag your hand a little bit, and it just feels like you're constantly trying to readjust the weight in your hand. So I think adding more of that adjustment, I think the adjustment is there in the hand, I don't think it's reflected in the weight.
Okay.
I think one thing that will help solve. What?
Are you still going?
No,
okay.
sorry.
I think one thing that will help solve the weight is the three masses of your character. They feel like they're at the same area every single throughout the entire motion. I feel like when they pull up the weights, the chest should be like raised high a little bit, because like it seems like they're squatting down to reach it up, and then they pull it up. So like their chest should be a little bit higher, and then they fall over. It just seems like the chest is at the same point throughout the entire animation.
Like stretching those two pieces.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a small thing that's actually kind of fighting you on the depth, which is that the barbell or dumbbell or whatever always is in the same perspective. Like the dumbbell is always flat on. And I think just getting a little bit of like twisting in that too is going to add to the depth of it. Just a small thing, but like it kind of ends up flattening out some of the rest of the animation. So.
I think another thing regarding the weight, specifically with the lifting, this is like a piece where they're struggling to lift it up, but for a good portion of it, they've already lifted it up almost the whole way with how their elbow is like contracted. So having it at a lower starting position and then having them struggle to lift it up higher from there, like with their like elbow fully extended and then lifting it to struggle, I think could help push that more.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to clarify for me. So like in the beginning when it's here?
Yeah, so in the beginning,
when it's here, it's originally actually resting on the leg. It's just,
okay.
I just did the skeleton, so it's just halfway between the thigh. No, I'm just making sure I understood.
But I think I can see what you're saying though, because like really you're wanting to always progress towards success, right? Like it starts off low, and then it gets it up a little bit, but then there's like almost these two poles where it doesn't go up at all. And I think on that second pole it could go up a little bit. And, you know, it's like kind of like you got it up to almost head height, and then that last one it goes too far.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And if the elbow isn't pulling and it's failing to pull, then you can show that in the chest moving backwards. The chest is moving backwards, but the elbow is still not pulling inward, so it's not actually lifting anything, but it shows the character trying to.
I think something that will help sell the struggle of trying to pull up the dumbbell is it seems like I know that it's originally resting on the thighs and then bring it up, but I think there should be like when they get it, there should be a little bit more of a struggle like when it comes up. Like the motion shouldn't just be like straight up. It should be like maybe it comes like it jolts down just a little bit and they raise it up. And I think also the pose when they have it all the way up in the air should be held a little bit longer, and then character falls down, because that could give us a little bit more room for having anticipation of like maybe the body weight shifts a little bit that leads to the fall.
And I think it also gives you that like moment of success before the like last tumble over. All right, cool. I know we're kind of pushing it just a little bit on time, so I'm going to go ahead and. It seems like anybody else have any last minute comments on this?
Do we have some more people to watch?
Yeah, we got 2 more to go through, but I think that they'll go relatively quick. So, yeah, let's give her a hand. So I think the 2 people we have left is Dylan and Dusty. Is that correct? Overlooking mouse. So if it's all right, Dusty is in. So Dusty's project is 2 projects long. So it's not. He's just showing us some progress. So since there's not going to be as much critique on that, we'll do that one last and kind of wrap up that. Now we got Dylan to
Cowboy.
Let's go, Cowboy.
So which one are we looking at?
You can delete revision, because I had to do a revised version of the revision.
So delete that one?
Yeah, delete that one.
Is this the one from last year?
So you can do whatever, you can do the original, then the revised.
So this is let's do revised. Watch that a few times, and then at the end we'll look at side by side.
Okay. There is.
There he is.
Hey, good hat motion.
Thanks.
That was good.
One more time. One more time. All right. So here comes the hard part. 2 minutes on the clock.
I think he runs off a little bit slow. Like
I think that's something that you have mentioned once too. You mean like once he takes off?
Once he takes off, it feels slow.
Oh, I was kind of going for that, like he's kind of pathetic.
It's just the pose makes you.
I could probably speed it up.
Well, I mean, really, if he's only in that window for let's say 3 poses.
Yeah.
Then really those 3 poses just have to convey exactly what you want it to convey, right? And it may be that it's not that it's the wrong pace, it's that it's the same pose that you see 3 times.
True.
And it may be that you see his chest come into the pose on frame 1, the chest goes out and the head is still in the, it's like kind of lagged back on frame 2.
Yeah.
And then frame 3 is just the top of his head, and it's kind of tipped back, and he's like, so you can almost just leverage those 3 together, like it's dragging him behind. It's still the same timing, but it would feel less linear across that window. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that, but I see what you're saying. I could, but I think you could kind of do something through there to kind of play with it a little bit.
Okay, I still think the hat stabilizes a little too quickly at the very end. Just a little bit. It goes up on its side and then it rocks back and then it places. I think there should be just a little bit more like wiggle when it lands there. And it stabilizes pretty quickly at the end there.
Alright.
I would almost sink it into the ground just a touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just give
Like
some
maybe
weight.
flatten it a bit.
I think if you had that same kind of like, that kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. Whenever he goes in the bar like so, if he did that the same way when he spits the cigars, like, have that same personality with that. that would be really good. But I really do.
Either the ricochet angle of the bullet is off, or the light angle is off from the movie perspective. I don't know if you changed light angle.
I didn't fix the light.
But it feels off now. Like looking back at it, just where the looks like the bullet would hit and go up. The angle, either the angle of the bullet is off or the angle of the light is off.
Okay, so then the light should, top of the light should probably be a little bit left.
Is this class in 205?
Yeah.
Okay, just make sure.
Can you go through it a little slowly than the
There's like 3 frames where the bullets actually explode, and I'm not even sure there should be that many.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think one more thing, when he's in that scared pose and you can see his eye through his arms, I think you should maybe add just like a small eye dart to like the ceiling or something, right? Because his eye is like stationary in that pose.
Yeah.
I think if you like just dart it up in a direction and then he takes that new pose, I think that would help him.
My 2 cents, I feel like the overlapping action when he's taking the steps, it may be just a touch too much. It's just a little, it's like it's going down just a little too far and you're never quite feeling him be in the aiming pose. And so I think maybe you could just not take it down quite so far. It's probably mostly on the shoulder where it doesn't go down as far. It just kind of like springs a little bit more at the bottom.
Right.
And I think that, because it goes down almost as much as it goes up.
Right.
And I think just take the lower part out just a little bit and it'll kind of feel like he's really aiming. It just got a little bit of springiness to it.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, Tanner, sorry, is, I kind of like the way it is now, because it fires, and the first part of the gun is fired, so he cowers. And then he sees the light, and he follows the light up, and then makes a connection that this is me.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe one thing you could do with that is like you have the eye kind of like awkwardly look around and then finally like land on that post. But
I just think you should have
one thing I
movement.
want to say, are you wanting to make the pose when like the character kind of cowardly hides away after they shoot? Like, are you wanting to make that snappy? Because I'm noticing that's the only pose in this that like feels like, I don't want to say the word limited, but it feels very quick. Are you wanting it to be that quick, or do you want like?
How fast it gets into that pose?
Yeah, because like the rest of this has like a lot of like drag and anticipation, and then this one it just quickly snaps into that one pose without like much. It feels like it's. I don't know if I'm just trying to get the point.
No, I think you're right. I think this one maybe we need to get down and like frame by frame it through there, and so let's kind of do that offline on some of that. But I see kind of what you're going at. It all hits it. Maybe just get a little bit of overlap on a few things. So, yeah, this is looking really good. Good man.
Side by side real quick.
Oh yeah, we'll play through the side by side really quick just to see the.
Yeah.
It used to be so.
This was what it was last year.
Like, and it's on the demo reel, or it's on the website, and the way it
I
was.
was so proud of that. And it was so fast.
So I actually just noticed his left foot right when he comes out of the store, like I think it clicks to the floor just barely. I don't know if it's your texture or what, but right
The new one? Or the old?
His left foot right there.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right there?
Yeah. Like right when he steps on like the gold piece.
Right there.
Oh.
Okay.
We found something. All right. So we're gonna look at Dusty's here. This is an interesting one because he's doing the complex game set, and so we're gonna be talking about this a little bit more later. This is where you all will be in about a week, right? Except for you'll have the smaller version of this. So y'all can come on in. We're wrapping up. So the biggest accomplishment on this right now is that he's gotten all of his animations functional for the most part inside of the engine, and that's sort of, I think, milestone 1 for this. Milestone 2 is like we're going to now take those animations and make all of them really strong. So that's kind of how we will work through in the process too. Dusty, do you have anything you want to add to it?
Some of these they're playing back a little weird because when I opened the project today to capture OBS, none of the animations were there, so I had to reset everything. When I was working with it last night, I guess it auto-saved or something.
Gotcha.
So that's why like the textures and stuff messed up. But there's an extra attack where he like kicks forward, and I'm trying to get a certain feature to where his body actually moves forward with it, and it's been a huge hassle. So that's probably why I didn't show it too much.
100%. Additive poses. Additive poses will fix like everything.
You mean like a blends on top of editing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be something that that we sort of look into to fix some stuff. So.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yes.
A lot of the animations from the chest stuff feel a little too stiff. Like there's some poses where the hands don't even move at all.
So my guess is that most of these he cranked out in like 5 minutes, just so we could get something in there that would function.
That's fine. That's just like a down the road.
But in all honesty, additive poses can fix that too.
Yeah. Cool. Let's give him a hand. Good job.
That was an intense